Today's session is titled Coherent Water and a Conscious World. Really, we're bringing two worlds together today, the world of science and the world of spirituality. We will be talking about two topics. One is water, which is, of course, essential for our life and for our survival. But we're going to talk about it in connection with the idea of how it contributes or it can contribute to raising the consciousness of the world. Today's discussion is actually also about two personalities. One of them is a scientist who's dedicated his life to studying water and understanding what it means, and understanding water not just from the conservation angle, but from the angle of its purity and its value in the energetic level. And the other person is Mohanji, a humanitarian and a visionary who's committed his life to the purpose of a single question: how can we make this world a place that is much better than what it was when we came in? So this discussion is about these two people and these two worlds and how they have come together in order to achieve a much larger purpose to help the world. I'm very happy to have with me today Dolf Zantinge, who you see on the screen. He's a scientist and an entrepreneur, and it's lovely to have you with us on this panel, Dolf.
Thank you, Madhu. Thank you.
With your permission, I'm going to give a short introduction and introduce you to your viewers so they know a little more about your background. Dolf, like I mentioned, is a scientist. He's an expert in the domain of what's called coherent water. But he's actually, by training and by background, an entrepreneur who spent most of his working career in the field of computer science, particularly artificial intelligence, machine learning, databases, and so on. Early in his career, he actually co-founded a company called Syllogic, which was in the domain of artificial intelligence. This was then sold off to Perot Systems. And after that, Dolf continued in a senior position in that company. Subsequently, he worked for a significant period in telecom and in fiber optics, in senior positions in several companies in Netherlands and Europe. So his career has all been about science and technology. At the same time, Dolf also has another side to him, which is his spiritual exploration. He has been deep into Kriya yoga for decades now. That's another side to Dolf that is important when we're trying to introduce him. About 2 decades ago, 15 or 18 years ago, I think, Dolf started a journey into Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and the traditional Chinese medicine. And this led him to jump into the world of understanding impact of electromagnetic frequencies and how that impacts life, impacts biological systems. From here, he then went into study of photonics, light, and ultimately that led to studying water. Along the way, he also met his business partner and research partner and collaborator, another fine gentleman by the name Eric Larricker. And the two of them have worked for much of the last 2 decades and have created a new technology, which is called full spectrum coherent water, which is returning water to its natural, coherent, and harmonic state, which is what biological systems like and nature likes. We will talk more about this, but today's discussion is going to be about how Dolf, a little bit about his story and understanding of this coherent water, as well as how he met Mohanji and how that journey has evolved from the time that they met and what that has led to in terms of their journey, towards this purpose of coherent water. To introduce myself, my name is Madhusudan. I am a Mohanji Acharya. I also serve as the CEO for Mohanji Foundation. And I also happen to be the primary interface for all work related to coherent water between Mohanji Foundation and Dolf and his team, Eric and his team. I'm very happy that you could take the time out for us, Dolf. We're very grateful. And with if that's fine with you now, let's start with our discussion. The first question I'd really like to pose to you is we speak about full spectrum coherent water. Can you talk a little bit about what this actually means and what it's all about?
Yeah, well, thank you, Madhu, for this introduction. Full spectrum, and what does the word spectrum itself means? Let me explain it very simple. What we have found in our laboratory, and due to many testing, we have seen that water is a carrier of information. A lot of people think that it is only H2O, but it is much more than that. As a matter of fact, it is the carrier of one of the most critical informations that we have also in our body, but also from outside, because it carries information from the planets. That is what we found. We have seen rhythms from the planets coming back into the water. And full coherence means that the full frequencies of the sun and the moon and the planets can be absorbed by this water and can be transported to all the biological lives that we see around us. Mm-hmm. And that's what we mean with the full spectrum. Why the full spectrum? What we also found after many testing in our laboratory and also in the field is that most of the waters in the world do not collect the full spectrum anymore. And that is a serious concern because this spectrum gives us the vitality and gives us the full life force.
Okay, so you say that the water that we get today doesn't absorb the full spectrum. Are there specific factors that have led to this? And is it like a phenomenon that is prevalent across the world, or it's kind of prevalent in certain areas and certain situations?
Yeah, very unfortunate. We have seen that on most places in the world, the water is not coherent anymore. And for a great part, it has to do with our lifestyle. We pollute the water, and due to the fact that water has a certain memory, when you pollute the water with all kinds of sewage and pollutions, toxins that we use and chemicals, the water remains in what we call in our laboratory in a chaotic state. And what we mean with chaotic is that it cannot absorb the full information anymore. Mm-hmm. It breaks down. And our behavior on this planet is so bad that if the water is increasing in a chaotic state, then we have a very, very serious problem, which we already have now. But that problem will increase. And that is the problem. That is why we have to bring it back into a coherent state. Right.
When you were responding, you touched upon this idea of the memory of water. This is, of course, I think it has been studied by many scientists in the past. When you say water has memory, what exactly does that mean? I mean, where is the memory, or how does it actually manifest?
Well, let me start a little bit. I go a step back. When we started to talk about water, we found out that we first did a lot of tests in our laboratory, and we found out that a lot of the communication between certain systems are broken or delayed or not functioning well. Certain diseases came up, especially the last 10, 20 years. A lot of allergies, all kinds of things. And what we found out is that there is something going on in our information system. And after a while, we found out that water is the critical key between all those elements. Water is the one that transports it. Well, then you go to the water industry and you ask them, what is water? And everybody said it's H2O. But we found out, and that is also supported by a lot of scientists nowadays, is that water can be influenced from outside by electromagnetic waves, and it holds these waves for a long time. And then you can see that what water does, and it does it by making connection between the atoms, it can create crystal forms, internal crystal forms. They can change in a flash of a second. can have multiple forms. But these crystal forms are very critical because they transport this information system. Well, a lot of scientists cannot move in that direction, but we really took these steps and we did a lot of research on that. And then we found out how it works and how you can improve that. And it was a long journey, with a lot of minefields in between, because we had to do that without the support of the existing scientific world. Although nowadays a lot of scientists understand that this water has a memory and plays a major role in our biological systems.
Great. If I understand right, I think you've spent almost 15 years in this journey of understanding water and coming up with full spectrum coherent water and the technology that's associated. So I come to my next question. So in this journey, how did you meet Mohanji? When did that encounter first happen?
Yeah, that was very, very interesting. When we were almost complete with our work, we knew what we were talking about, and we said, now we can really go to the world. And we did a lot of tests in the field. I met a lady who met Mohanji a year ago in the Peace Palace. And she was connected to Professor Witteveen. Professor Witteveen, for what people to know, he was the former chairman of the Sufi Council worldwide. So he was in the world of the Sufis a well-known and very respected man. I met Professor Witteveen many years before. He was a good friend of mine as well. And that lady who was working for him had the order to create a kind of meeting, gathering with all the religious leaders in the world. And she set up a meeting in Den Haag, in the Peace Palace, and there she met Mohanji for the first time. And she was initiated herself many years ago in Kriya Yoga. She was also connected to Sri M. And I met that lady, and she said, I know that you are working with water, and I showed her the things that we done in the laboratory. She said, are you willing to give a presentation in Assisi, in Italy?
Okay.
And Italy, Assisi is very important. Franciscus of Assisi is in the Catholic world one of the holy men, and it's a beautiful monastery over there. And Saint Franciscus is very well known in the Catholic world. And there we had a meeting with all the religious leaders, and there I met Mohanji, and that was for the first time that I met him in this period.
So this was in Assisi.
Yes.
How far back in time was this?
Oh, that was a few years ago, but it was very special for me because I didn't know who Mohanji was. So before I met him, I went through the agenda of the meeting because I wanted to find out who are the speakers and who are the religious leaders. And there I saw for the first time the photo of Mohanji. And when I saw his photo, I can really remember that I was sitting for a minute and I was completely, amazed about the connectivity I suddenly had. I saw all the other leaders, but Mohanji was for me something special. And then I met him there, and I introduced myself to him, and he was there with his charming wife, Davy, and I introduced myself, and immediately I had a certain connection. And after a few minutes, he immediately started to talk about Kriya Yoga and some of the masters. Well, normally people in the West haven't got a clue what Kriya Yoga is, and not the masters. But it was as if he could read the background, and I was really surprised at that moment. And then I gave a presentation. After the presentation, Davy and Mohanji came to me, and Mohanji said, I want you to send a presentation to me, and I will respond to it. And that was the first time that I showed to the religious leaders in the world what conscious water means and what effect it has also on the spiritual level. But Mohanji was the one who really got it. He really understood what it means. And after a few weeks, he called me, and from that moment on, we have a very close relationship. And I became also very interested in his forms of Kriya, and that is how we moved on also on the spiritual journey with Mohanji.
So you mentioned about Kriya Yoga. I know from our previous conversations that you've been involved with Kriya Yoga for decades now. Can you talk about your journey in the world of Kriya Yoga, and how that kind of led you to this phase of your life?
Yeah, well, when I was already in my 20s, I did all kinds of forms of yoga. Let people, I could feel that people had a certain disease, and I wanted to move on with that. I did all kinds of yoga until I got the book of Yogananda, autobiography of a yogi from Paramahansa Yogananda. And that book was a real shock in my life. It was as if the book was going to talk to me. I thought, this is amazing. Then a few weeks later, I met a Sufi from India. I had a one-to-one with him. And he started to laugh when he met me. And he did a lot of mantras. He said, what do you want? I said, I want to move in that direction that's in that book. And then he started to laugh again. And he said, okay, let's see. And he started to sing a lot of mantras in front of me. And then we left as good friends. And he was a yogi who lived in Puri in India. And beside the fact that he was a Sufi, he was also initiated in Kriya Yoga. And then 4 or 5 weeks later, I met the people in the lineage of Yogananda from India's time. And then a few years later, the people asked me to be the chairman of that organization in Western Europe. So that is more than 35 years ago now.
Wow.
So since I practice Kriya Yoga.
Interesting. So my one question, picking on what you said, you were at this conference in Assisi. That was your first presentation to the different spiritual and religious leaders, and of course you met Mohanji over there. But of all of the leaders, you decided to kind of forge a closer relationship with Mohanji. What led you to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, what were your impression that kind of prompted you to do that? It would be interesting to understand.
Well, we had meetings with other leaders as well, Hindu leaders, Buddhist leaders. But Mohanji, the energy level was completely different with all of them. And you also could recognize that he has been a businessman himself. He understood very well what it means to set up an organization, to do it. And his feedback was much wider, but also much deeper. It was as if he understood the impact of water in a much broader sense. And then we had, I was in a lucky position to have many discussions private discussions with Mohanji, also upon the water and upon consciousness. For us in our team, we found out that if you really want to use this water in the right way, you have to understand how spirituality and how the world of consciousness is going to work. And the right answers came from Mohanji. He was the one who really understood how to do it, but he also connected it immediately to an organization form and how to spread it in the world and how to move on with that. And that was a serious, different effect than speaking with him than to the other leaders. Besides that, it was not only that, it was also the connection. I mean, it was as if, from some maybe strange, but from others maybe the same feeling, but it was a little bit as coming home with Mohanji. It was as if you met an old friend again. And you could really trust him, and there was a deep respect, and that was the difference. As a matter of fact, you cannot describe it in words. It was something deeper.
No, I understand that feeling. I think many people have that kind of what you described as a coming home, or the deep sense of familiarity. That's a theme that we hear. I experienced it. And I know many others who have that sense of comfort, in your interactions with Mohanji. I want to touch on...
Yeah, it was, by the way, not only with Mohanji, it was also with meeting with a lot of the people that are around Mohanji. It was as if you meet family members. And that feeling was really there. There was no words. You see how these people, how they work together, and that also made a huge impact. Yes.
I want to go back to one of the points you made about Kriya Yoga. I know that you were initiated in Kriya Yoga several years ago, and you've been practicing that, of course. But you also came last year in 2019 to the Bosnian pyramids, where Mohanji had a program. You were part of that program. You and your lovely wife, both of you got initiated into consciousness Kriya from Mohanji. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, my wife and I were both initiated. My wife was also initiated in the other forms of Kriya Yoga. Well, I've never told you this story myself, but it was a serious experience. After the initiation that evening, I had to give a small speech in Bosnia, and what's going on in my mind? So many things happened, I could hardly speak at that moment. But a lot of things took place. First of all, I found out that the Kriya Yoga that he gives and he initiates you in the Kriya is incredibly powerful. And that was really amazing. As a matter of fact, within 10 to 15 seconds, I feel a vibration that was new to me. But I also felt that after the initiation, a lot of things took place. As a matter of fact, I went to Dubrovnik and I stayed there for 2 days in bed because so many things happened.
And you were driving, right? And you were driving. That was your road trip.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But anyway, I stayed there, and I really I sensed the energy, and it was so different. And I thought this is amazing. And since that time, because I still practice the other Kriya forms, but I always move on to the Kriya form of Mohanji. That's always the case, because within 15 to 20 seconds, you start to sense that amazing vibration, especially on top of your head. And you really feel it and recognize it. So I really feel the power that is giving. And I see it as a big grace. And
I think when you attended the Bosnian pyramids, that was probably your first program with Mohanji, right? Where, of course, Mohanji does these various programs through the year, taking people to the power centers.
True.
Kriya was one part of it, was at the Bosnian pyramids because it is a power center. What were your impressions? I think this was your first time on a program with Mohanji, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, there were multiple impressions. First of all, I met some of the people who live in Bosnia and in Serbia, and I was really impressed how kind these people were and how they all worked together. It was very impressive. It was a very pleasant, but also very professional behavior. Mm-hmm. And that was something that struck me, because I have seen other things in India and other places as well with other yoga leaders, but in this case it was very professional done. And the program itself was really also connected to spirituality, and that was also, you could sense that in the pyramids, but also the story behind it. What I notice is that Mohanji wants to, that's the impression that I get, of course, but it's my personal impression, is that he wants to teach the people around him that there is much more than the limited mind as we see it now. He made us very much aware upon these very, very old cultures that have been there, and with all their techniques on energy and building, all the things. And he makes us aware that there is much more than we learn in our school and we see with our eyes. And he takes a journey with you so that you understand the energies, you start to feel the energies again. And that is also what happened during the initiation. And that was the first time, yes.
Yeah, and later I think we met again in Slovenia from after your road trip to Dubrovnik, and then I think you kind of drove across Croatia.
Yeah.
Good.
And the beauty thing is that when I've been with Mohanji, I immediately, within a few minutes, you start to feel the energy. And you don't have to talk. It's only you have to sit there and you feel the energy. And you can also sense the energy in a lot of other people around them. And that is part of the beauty. You don't have to do anything. It happens.
Have you thought about attending any other programs with Mohanji? I heard from someone that one of your desires is to go to the ultimate power center on earth, which is Kailash. Have you had these thoughts?
No, but I can tell you a story about it. I haven't been there.
Yeah.
No. But Mohanji said that last year he was going to take out a lot of the karma of people around him. And he did some very special session.
Right.
I was not there, but I was sitting on that specific day. I was sitting in my room reading a book with my wife. She was sitting next to me.
Right.
And I didn't know, suddenly something happened in my room. And my whole room did light up. And it was as if there was an explosion of energy around us. So I stopped reading. I said to my wife, "Do you sense the same energy?" She said, "Yeah." Well, I have the ability to measure some of these energies as well. I said, "I don't know what's happening, but I think somebody is working on us, but there's an incredible power, and this is serious." And it took almost 2-3 hours. Then later on, I heard that in that same time frame, Mohanji did that special
right
in Kailash. That was on that same time frame.
Yeah. So just for the benefit of people who are watching, what Dolf is referring to is a special yajna or a ceremony that Mohanji led on the banks of the holy lake Mansarovar on our pilgrimage to Kailash. There was Kailash with Mohanji 2019. And this ceremony was oriented at cleansing the karma of the ancestors. So that's the lineage karma as it's called. And so the group of people at the program physically was maybe about 100, 110. But what Mohanji had done prior to the program is, in the intention of the Sankalpa, as they call it, he included all the people that are connected to him, so all the people that were there, their families, and all the people that are connected to him and love him and support him, in any form and fashion. So Dolf and his family and Dolf's partner, Eric, and his family were also part of that because of the connection of the water project with Mohanji. And, that's what, on that day is what Dolf was referring to. So this was the special puja that was done. And incidentally, Dolf, you were not the only person who felt it. All the people over there felt it, but several other people said that, they felt like one big weight was kind of lifted off them. And, it took many days for them to actually feel that. That was truly a very special program. It brought back some very nice memories of Kailash. Yeah. This year, of course, Kailash is not happening because of the whole COVID situation. But, let's see, maybe 2021 is hopefully a new year and a different year from how 2020 has been.
Wait, I heard how difficult the trip is. Maybe we come by helicopter. You never know.
Well, we'll see. You never know. I have another question. Coming about programs with Mohanji. One of the things we do in Mohanji Foundation every year in the beginning of the year, typically, we bring together all of our country leaders and team leaders for an annual conference, which is really about people uniting as a global family and, again, recommitting to the common purpose that Mohanji set for the whole organization and for the people, which is to see how you can add value to society, to the world in whatever form of fashion. You and Eric, both of you decided to join us. Tell us about that. What led you to do that? What were your impressions? You had, of course, a chance to meet Mohanji and spend time with him. But you also had a chance to meet with, many of the people that are working on the Mohanji platform, the broad Mohanji platform. Tell us about your.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to do that because it was a very interesting and important meeting. Mohanji gave us the opportunity to tell the leaders in the world what coherent water means. I can imagine that for a lot of them, it was the first introduction to something completely new, because a lot of people are not aware of the fact that water is having a direct impact on your spiritual level, because it is the source of information and it brings it all together. You can, by the way, read it also in the very old scriptures. And so we had the opportunity to give a presentation there. And what we are trying to establish now, and that was also something I promised in Bosnia, is that we would love to see that the Mohanji organization is one of the first organizations in the world that is getting access to this special water. And we were telling the people over there that we want to introduce this water in the coming year. That is what we do now at the moment. We work extremely hard on that, and you too, because you also support this water project in India. And we try to set up business strategies to make it happen, because it must run via businesses or foundations.
Right.
And the Mohanji organization is really supporting us on a worldwide level. And until the day of today, every time when we have very serious business meetings, I always tell Mohanji what the status is and what his thoughts are. And until now, we will see that we move forward. We move forward rapidly. It's very intense. We work extremely hard, you too. And we try to set it up together with many people in the Mohanji organization. And we would like to see, and that is for a very specific reason, because and that is the special effect. Mohanji told me several times what the status is of this world. And he said, we really have to work hard to make certain things happen, to change this world to a much better world. And that is why we want to do it with the right people, because knowing as a former businessman, I know that business can also delay. And now we introduce something that has nothing to do with traditional business based on profit and loss. In this case, the profit and loss is the consciousness level. And that is something else. And until now, Mohanji's support is more than 100%. And there we had the ability to meet also the leaders in the world and to tell them that we want to work together. And that is what we do.
Right. You missed one part of your Sri Lanka experience. We went to the special spot in Katargama, right? Where Babaji's growing up years were. How was your experience over there? That was a pilgrimage.
Well, in Sri Lanka, something else struck my wife and myself very much, because after the meetings, Mohanji did that evening a fire ceremony.
Yeah, Mahashivratri.
Yes, and that was really special. I mean, you could feel and sense how the energy was built up. Every minute it was building up. It took in total around 3-4 hours. But I could hardly sleep that evening. There was so much energy. It was such an amazing experience. And we said, we will never forget this. And you could also see that Mohanji in that moment of time was in a different state. He was so concentrated. And you could really sense that he was controlling the entire group of people. He knew exactly what was going on. And it was something we will never forget. And I hope that we will do that very often in the future as well. It was really great to be there. After that, we couldn't join the entire trip, because we were invited to go to the Himalayas and meet the Buddhist leaders to give a presentation of water as well,
right?
Together with the Devi.
Yeah.
So we couldn't join the whole trip, but it was extremely intense. And after that, we met Mohanji again.
Where was that? That was back in India, right? I mean, I think in Mogamdeka, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the Temple of the Divine Mother, Mogamdeka.
Yes. and we had to get up at 4 o'clock, and also that was an immense experience. After that, Mohanji was extremely kind and introduced us also to one of the holy mothers who lives in the mountains over there.
Right.
Also late in the afternoon, we met a very, very old Swami, and it was amazing. You could see the poverty over there, but that man he was not poor, he was incredible rich. You could see that. I mean, and then he invited us in his very, very small meditation hall, and there you could sense the incredible energy that the man had. And yeah, these trips make it unforgettable to be with Mohanji. Yes.
That old saint that you're referring to, Chandrakurti Swami, he's 122 years old, and he's a direct disciple of Bhagavan Nityananda, who's in Ganeshpuri, who's a giant of a master. But he's part of the tradition that Mohanji belongs to. Yeah, I think that day was special. You also got a chance to see the spear, right, of the Divine Mother.
Yeah, that was a bumpy ride.
To put it mildly.
You had to go on top of the mountain, but there was no road. So you had to go with a 4-wheel drive on the road, but the it was terrible. But anyway, it was good to be there, and it was a serious experience that we didn't want to miss. Yeah.
So the thing that always strikes me about how Mohanji interacts with different people, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. There are times when he's deeply on the spiritual side, like during the ceremony or at the temple. There are other times when he's introducing us to masters of very high stature, seemingly very simple looking, but you can make out that they're of very high stature. And there are other times where he's joking, and there are other times when he's talking very practical business side. And various people connect to him in various ways because everybody, interacts differently. I've always been curious about coming from your background, grown up in Netherlands, in the Western world, but also with one foot in spirituality through your Kriya. How do you relate to Mohanji? People relate to him like a friend. Some people relate to him strictly as a spiritual master. Some people call him father. How do you connect to him? When you think about Mohanji, how do you relate to him?
The more I'm with Mohanji, the more I get always the impression that I'm meeting an old friend.
Okay.
Not a friend of this life, but an old friend. And I see him with a lot of grace and wisdom on multiple sides. On the spiritual side, you can sense that. But on the other hand, he's also very pragmatic. And he makes jokes that makes that he is a man of the world. And that makes that you can get access to him, and he's honest, and that makes it so beautiful. There is nothing in between.
Yeah.
And also the books that he wrote, that he has written, when you read the books, it is as if you come home again. That is where you want to be. It is, that's logic. That is what you want. And that is the constant feeling. And that is why you want to become a part of that. Because it is really like coming home a little bit.
Beautiful.
And that is why you also understand that you have a job in this world. You really have to make sure that we are going to change our behavior. And I think in that respect, it's very important that people like Mohanji, who has also a background in business, but also is a family man. That's also very important. He understands families, and he understands how the relationships, how they work. And it makes it so easy for a lot of people to discuss many items with him.
Yeah, true.
Because he has gone through all those stages himself as well.
True. Yeah, he speaks from practical experience, no theory.
No theory. He has been there. He knows how it feels when you have pain. He knows how it feels when you move up. He knows your ego. And that makes it so different with many of the other spiritual leaders. Yes. And I also see him sometimes on a picture driving in Harley Davidson, and that is so fantastic. I mean, fantastic.
As he calls them, breaking the frames. That is his breaking the frames picture.
Yeah. And that makes it that it is so alive. Everybody recognizes that.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, you mentioned that early in the conversation that by the time you met Mohanji, most of your work on this water project, as I call it, was kind of almost done. Did your interaction with Mohanji at Assisi and then the association later, did it make any change in the way you approach the whole thing, or do you, or has it been a continuity? If you had to reflect on what has been, let's say, the impact that Mohanji's interaction has had on your vision or your purpose or your approach.
He did. For us, it was very, very strange. I mean, you talk about science, but in the normal world of science, you bring something to the market and then you make money or you sell the product. But in this case, we became very much aware that this product is not a product. This is something else. This is something that has impact on agriculture, on health, on spirituality, on cleansing the rivers. It has an impact on so many items. And you feel a very big responsibility towards this water and also the protection of it. And Mohanji made us very, very much aware how to protect it. And he emphasizes it constantly. And that is why we want to work also with this organization, because we only want to do it with people that we can trust. Because I have been in the world of business. As a matter of fact, I'm still in that world. And well, not many people that you can trust for 100%. And if you have a product like this that can have such an incredible impact, then you better prepare yourself. And for that reason, the impact of Mohanji is very, very critical, and his support as well. And not only that, also his blessings.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm going to ask you a slightly tricky question. From all the inputs and advice that Mohanji has given you, if you had to pick one as the most valuable advice, what would that be?
Okay. Ooh.
I told you it's tricky.
Okay, well, this is that's an interesting question. Okay, well, it had to do with the changes that take place on this planet, and that probably will take place. I mean, I had discussions with Mohanji because I sensed certain things that could take place, and Mohanji gave me some advice. It was not only advice, but it's also some background information upon what can happen on this planet and why we have to move forward in a specific way. And that advice is something that my wife and I discuss almost on a weekly basis. And that we really are we live in a very, very specific time frame of this planet, which is rather critical. And I noticed that not only because I'm not only working on the water, I work also in many advisory groups. I worked in the past with politicians and other people. And you can see that the problems that we are facing in the world, and I think that they will increase. And we will get a paradigm shift in the near future. If we don't do that paradigm shift in our mind, in our thinking, get rid of the old stuff that we have build up in our mind. And I think that is so extremely critical that people like Mohanji, who have that broad sense, that is for us very, very important, that you can discuss these items with somebody like Mohanji. Yes. And not being afraid of getting or moving in that new direction. As a matter of fact, I can't wait. Let's go on in that direction. But you see that a lot of the old forces in this world, the old economy and the old politics, etc., they want to go back to the old world, and that will not hold. That will and must change. But let's try to do it in the most peaceful way, if possible. And for that reason, I think the advices of a man like Mohanji are extremely critical for all of us. I hope I gave the answer.
I think you did. Though it wasn't just one, you gave me 2 or 3. It wasn't one particular advice. So you kind of covered the zone. You said something about the specific times that we are in now and the challenges that the world is going through and the shifts that we're going through. So I have 2 related questions to that. Are there specific developments in technology or anything like that which are emerging as like a threat that maybe we have not recognized enough? And second, on the other side, this water and what the potential it holds is of course one thing, but are there other counterbalancing things which can help us, mitigate the danger of the threat? I mean, what are your thoughts on both? Because I'm asking this question because you are a person who's straddling both science and spirituality, right? So I'm very interested in understanding how to help navigate this time.
Yeah, it's a very important question, I think, because what is happening now in the world is. Let me give a little bit background. I worked for many years also in Silicon Valley with some of the top scientists in the world in databases and IT, and especially also in telco. And there I noticed that when you have developed a new product, that everybody's excited and they immediately talk about how the quarterly figures can increase, etc., etc.
Right.
That is for them the key driver. That was for me also sometimes very difficult to stay in the world of business with all its politics and money involved. Because I asked many of my colleagues, especially with the introduction of 4G in the telco world, do we have any idea what this means for the planet and for the plants and the animals and the humans? And everybody said, yeah, it's safe. That was very strange because in my energy field, I could sense that it was not safe at all. I could feel that it could block something. So that was one of the reasons that I started also the laboratory, because I didn't trust the outcome of the tests that they did in the laboratories, because they said it was safe, but the tests were always limited to a very specific area whereby they could, in legal terms and conditions, they could write up what it was, and you had to stay in that framework. But those people are absolutely not interested in energies and the evolution of this planet. They are really very much interested in quarterly figures and what effect it can have on society. If you join these meetings, then you really understand how this game is played. It is a serious game on a worldwide scale. And I have been in many of those meetings. And then I understood very well that a lot of people are absolutely, they do not care about this planet at all. They really care about themselves or to a limited group. And when you have comments on that, then you are not a friend anymore. So that was one of the reasons that we also started to set up our laboratory and to do these tests ourselves. And then we were really shocked. Now, knowing that 5G, the new telco wonder, was coming up, we also started to do some of these tests in a very early stage. And we were really shocked upon the effects. And it is not a surprise that worldwide, a lot of people are standing up and become very nervous about it. Because the professors and the scientists in the world say, yeah, but you have a terminal effect. And terminal effect means the heating. And that when phone on your ear, you can heat up. But there are also non-thermal effects. And those thermal effects are the vibrations that come out of it. Well, knowing our body, our body is completely built up by a huge number of specific vibrations, very low vibrations, but your liver and your kidney, your brain, they all have vibrations. Otherwise, they can't function.
Right.
And what you do see now is that a lot of these vibrations can have a vibration that block the communication. And that 80% of the waves that 5G is coming up with blocks these vibrations. The effect is that for one person can have a headache, another person can get asthma, third person can have concentration problem, and number 4 can get cancer. You cannot say it is only one disease. It depends to your resistance. But, and that is for me really, and I'm working on a daily basis on that at the moment. So this is a serious question that you raised. On a daily basis, I am still working with some scientists all over the world to see how can we stop this and make this aware that this rollout is very dangerous for the people. And what you do see is that many of these scientists, they are taken out of the web, YouTube, all the communication is taken out, the papers they published are taken out. And there is something very strange going on. And there are a lot of laws and regulation systems now coming out to protect the telco world. There is in the European Union a completely new law coming up that you're not even allowed to protest against it. But if we are going to bring in 50,000 satellites with 5G and 5G towers all over the world, then what you will see is that the complete communication system in the water is blocked. Mm-hmm. And that has a very, very big impact also on our spirituality. So we have to find out what it means, but we are working against a certain time frame. So if you say, is there something that keeps you busy beside introducing the water, then it is this. On a daily basis, I work with people to bring it under the attention of people. But I was, for instance, myself, I was going to have a call of a meeting with the local ministers here. I was invited to do that with 2 professors. And last week that was cancelled because they want to postpone it, etc. And that means that the people on the street, they don't get the right information. They get information from the telco industry, and this is going to harm the world. And I don't think that any person on this world has the right to bring this world into danger. Nobody. And I think for that reason, we have to do it in the right way, do the right tests, tell the people what it really means, and in a world whereby integrity should be number 1, and honesty, and not the quarterly figures. And that is something that has to do with the water as well, because what we have found is that the water in the world is already in chaos, but the chaos will increase. The good news is that the water that we have made, what we called full spectrum coherent water, has a certain resistance against this. That's the good news. And also for that reason, we want to introduce it very fast. So there is also a race against the clock, and that is why we work so hard to get it done. And that is why I'm also pleased with the Mohanji organization that supports this. So that's fantastic news. But yeah, in the world of technology, we introduce new technologies, like certain forms of nanotechnology and robot technology that has nothing to do with increasing our consciousness. We want to increase the technology, but it is almost as if we do not want to increase our consciousness. And that is something that is very strange for me. Because if we don't do both, then we run into serious problems, I think.
So you're saying the water, full spectrum coherent water, because you consume it and bodies are almost entirely water, does it help humans to consume this water? From
what we have done is that we have used 4 and 5G antennas, and then we beam them to water, and then we measure the water later on. And what we have seen is that the coherent water that we want to introduce in the world, and to make it affordable for everybody, that is bouncing back. The negative energy is not as harmful, and it is coming back to the more natural state whereby the information systems remains available. So that is very important. Yes, that's true.
Interesting. So I think we are in for a very exciting ride. I think the next few years, the battle of science and the battle for consciousness, and both going on at the same time.
Absolutely.
Parting question, last question, hopefully.
Yes.
If you had to just summarize for the benefit of everybody who's watching, in 2 or 3 lines, what your purpose as the developer or the innovator for the full spectrum coherent water, what is your purpose in terms of what you'd like to do with this project for the world, and what you see as the role of the Mohanji factor, as I could call it, in this purpose, and how do the two kind of unite? I started our session with the question that this is a discussion about how these two worlds, your purpose and how Mohanji's purpose unite. Help us round it up by summarizing in your words, in your experience, how it shapes up.
Well, in my experience during the research periods I did over the last few years, I noticed with all the equipment that we had, how all the things in this planet work together, the plants, the fungi, the bacteria. It is an amazing circle of, a kind of circle that all works and unites it together. And what we are doing now is that we are breaking up that circle. Why we as human beings should understand it. I think the most intelligent species on this world is not understanding how it all works. I hope that we stop breaking this circle and that we start to understand with an increase of our consciousness how we have to work together with this planet. And I think to do that in a short time frame, we have to work together with people like the people in the Mohanji organization to make it happen. And with the support of Mohanji, we can move in the right direction, I hope. And I hope that we can all achieve that in a few years' time. Beside that, if the water really shows these effects, and that is what we see constantly, if the water shows these effects, then we will also see that in a more traditional scientific world, there will be a paradigm shift. And that is absolutely necessary as well. I mean, for instance, homeopathy is very well known in India, but in a lot of the Western countries, whereby they don't make a lot of money out of it, they want to stop it. We have to understand that the profit or loss is something else than based on money. It's based on something complete. It's based upon the circle. There's a profit and loss, and we can all benefit of that. I think we have to change that, and I hope we can all do that together with the Mohanji organization.
Thank you. For a better world, if I had to summarize, how do you make a better world? And use the water to make a better world. And use the coherence in the water to actually drive them. Thank you, Dolf.
And then good. Okay, Madhu, thank you as well. Bye.
Thank you. And for our viewers, thank you for watching. If you have questions about how to get in touch with Dolf or you want to understand more, please write in the comments and somebody from our team will help you understand more about the field of coherent water. And keep watching our program. There will be another program tomorrow at the same time. I think that will be Devi's sharing of her journey. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, Dolf. We're privileged to have you. Very grateful for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to do it. Thank you. Bye.